The cold wind howled over the frozen lake, where a golden retriever was stranded on a tiny ice floe surrounded by icy water. His trembling figure looked small against the vast expanse of ice, and every second of delay could have been his last. People on the shore watched with bated breath as the rescue team began an operation that would decide the fate of the helpless dog. What happened next left everyone deeply moved. Friends, what would you do in such a situation? Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and tell us what you think of this incredible story. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to catch more exciting and inspiring stories. The morning was calm, yet the air carried the unforgiving chill of winter. Frost clung to every surface, from the barren trees lining the shore to the sturdy pier extending over the lake's frozen expanse. The lake itself lay still, a vast, glassy sheet of ice stretching into the horizon. It appeared serene, untouched by time, a picture-perfect representation of winter's quiet beauty. But this tranquility hid an undercurrent of peril. In the middle of the lake, breaking the uniformity of the white expanse, floated a small, fragile ice floe. It moved ever so slightly, rocked by the subtle currents beneath the frozen surface. Atop this precarious island of ice was a golden retriever. Its fur, once likely thick and warm, was now glazed with frost, its body trembling uncontrollably as it huddled low against the biting wind. The retriever's breath came in rapid, visible puffs, its fearful eyes scanning the distance as if searching for a lifeline that wasn't there. The dog's isolation on the ice floe made the vastness of the lake even more striking. The floe seemed impossibly small against the boundless backdrop of frozen water. It was a lonely, heartbreaking sight, one that would haunt anyone who saw it. The golden retriever looked utterly out of place in this barren, icy landscape, its golden coat a stark contrast to the cold, lifeless gray of the surrounding ice. The first to notice the dog was a jogger, bundled in layers against the cold. She stopped in her tracks, her breath catching as her eyes focused on the trembling figure in the distance. At first, she thought it might be her imagination, perhaps a stray shadow or a trick of the light. But as she squinted and stepped closer to the lake's edge, the reality of what she was seeing became clear. Her heart sank. Word spread quickly. Passers-by stopped to look, and soon a small crowd began to gather on the shore. They stood in silence at first, their breath visible in the freezing air, each person trying to comprehend the situation. The dog was too far out to reach without great risk, and the ice between the shore and the floe looked dangerously thin. Every crack and groan of the frozen surface seemed amplified, a reminder of the peril that awaited anyone who might try to cross it. The retriever let out a faint, mournful bark, a sound that carried over the icy expanse and struck the crowd like a physical blow. It was a call for help, a desperate plea from a creature that seemed to know its time was running out. The sight of the dog, its golden fur shimmering with frost, was both heartbreaking and urgent. The spectators could do nothing but watch, their helplessness as heavy as the winter air. The lake, so calm and silent, now seemed menacing, its stillness masking the dangers beneath. The floe rocked slightly, its edges appearing thinner with each passing moment. The dog shifted nervously, its paws slipping on the slick surface as it tried to maintain balance. It was clear that the retriever couldn't hold on much longer. The growing crowd murmured anxiously, their voices hushed but filled with urgency. Phones were pulled out, and rescue teams were called. Every second felt like an eternity, the weight of inaction pressing heavily on the gathering. All eyes remained fixed on the retriever, whose trembling figure seemed to symbolize the fragility of life itself in the face of nature's unyielding force. The frosty morning that had begun with such ordinary calm had transformed into a scene of quiet desperation. The frozen lake, with its deceptive beauty, had become the stage for a drama no one could have anticipated. And in its center, on a fragile shard of ice, a golden retriever clung to life, waiting for anyone, to answer its silent plea. The mystery of how the golden retriever ended up stranded on the drifting ice floe weighed heavily on everyone who saw it. The lake, vast and unyielding, held its secrets beneath its frozen surface, leaving no clues as to how the dog had become trapped. Theories swirled among the onlookers, each trying to piece together a story from the scattered fragments of evidence. Perhaps the retriever, full of the boundless curiosity and energy that characterized its breed, had been chasing something. A bird, startled from the shore, might have taken flight over the ice, its fluttering wings an irresistible target. The dog, driven by instinct, might have bounded onto the frozen lake without a second thought, its paws skimming the surface in pursuit of its prize. But then the ice could have weakened under its weight, fracturing and leaving it stranded on the shrinking floe. Another possibility was more chilling. The retriever might have fallen into the freezing water, dragged in by its own weight or the deceptive thinness of the ice. In a desperate bid for survival, it could have clawed its way onto the nearest solid surface, the fragile patch of ice now carrying it away from safety. The thought of the dog struggling against the icy water, its fur soaked and heavy, sent shivers through the minds of those watching from the shore. And then there was the heartbreaking suggestion that someone might have abandoned it. The idea was too painful for many to entertain for long, but the question lingered: how had a dog, meant to be someone's loyal companion, ended up alone in such a dangerous place? The uncertainty only deepened the sense of urgency to save the retriever before it was too late. The floe itself seemed impossibly small, no larger than a dining table, its edges jagged and uneven. The way it bobbed gently with the lake's subtle currents made it appear even more precarious, as if one wrong move could tip it over and send the dog back into the freezing water. The retriever, for its part, seemed aware of the danger. It crouched low, its body pressed flat against the ice, as if trying to make itself smaller, lighter, less likely to break the fragile raft keeping it afloat. The dog's golden fur, matted with frost, clung tightly to its shivering frame. Its tail, usually a banner of joy and excitement, was tucked close to its body, a signal of fear and exhaustion. Every few moments, it would lift its head and look toward the shore, its dark eyes scanning the growing crowd for a familiar face, a savior, a sign of hope. The sight was a silent plea, one that struck at the hearts of everyone watching. The floe drifted further from the shore, nudged along by the gentle but relentless movement of the lake's undercurrent. The dog's isolation seemed to grow with every passing second, the distance between it and safety an ever-widening chasm. Its occasional whimpers, carried on the cold wind, were a stark contrast to the stillness of the frozen expanse. The sound was faint, but it carried an unmistakable message: help was needed, and time was running out. As the onlookers debated how the dog might have ended up in such a perilous situation, one truth became clear: the retriever's predicament was no longer about its past. It was about its future, about whether it would have the chance to leave this frozen nightmare behind. The crowd's murmurs quieted as rescue efforts began to form. The dog, perched on its lonely ice floe, had no way of knowing that help was on the way, but the humans watching from the shore knew they couldn't fail it. "Isn't there something we can do?" a man asked, his voice tight with frustration. He stepped forward, his boots crunching against the frozen ground, but another bystander stopped him. "The ice is too thin," they warned, gesturing toward the surface. Indeed, the ice between the shore and the floe was riddled with cracks, its translucence revealing the frigid water below. One wrong step could send even a well-meaning rescuer plunging into the depths. Suggestions began to fly. Could we use a rope? Maybe throw something out to the dog to grab onto? What about a boat? Does anyone have one nearby? The ideas were well-intentioned but impractical, each met with a shake of the head or a muttered explanation of why it wouldn't work. The tension among the onlookers grew palpable, a collective unease that thickened the already heavy winter air. Children clutched their parents' hands, their wide eyes fixed on the dog. One young girl tugged at her mother's sleeve, her voice small but insistent. "Can't we save it?" The mother's lips pressed into a thin line as she stroked her daughter's hair, unable to answer. The helplessness was suffocating. The crowd's focus shifted as the dog let out a faint bark, its voice hoarse and weak. The sound carried across the ice, a heartbreaking call for help that struck everyone like a physical blow. A few people turned away, unable to bear the sight or sound of the animal's distress, while others edged closer to the water's edge, as though proximity alone could bring them closer to a solution. Minutes dragged into what felt like hours, each tick of the clock eroding the dog's chances. The ice floe rocked gently with the movement of the water beneath it, its edges thinning visibly under the strain. The dog shifted, its paws slipping slightly on the slick surface, and a collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Every movement seemed to bring it closer to disaster. The sound of distant sirens cut through the cold air, a faint but welcome promise of hope. Rescue services were on their way, and the crowd buzzed with a mix of relief and urgency. "They need to hurry," someone muttered, their breath visible in the frosty air. All eyes remained fixed on the dog, its golden coat now a beacon of both fragility and resilience. Despite the growing tension, no one left. They stayed, bound together by a shared sense of responsibility, their breath forming clouds in the freezing air as they waited for the professionals to arrive. The sight of the dog, trembling and alone, had touched something deep within each of them, a reminder of life's vulnerability and the profound need to act when faced with a chance to help. The sound of sirens grew louder, piercing through the icy stillness of the lake. The crowd on the shore stirred, their anxious murmurs replaced with a flicker of hope as the rescue team's vehicle came into view. It pulled to a stop near the edge of the gathering, its flashing lights reflecting off the frozen surface of the water. The rescuers, bundled in heavy winter gear, emerged quickly, their faces set with determination as they assessed the situation. The team worked with practiced efficiency, unloading ropes, harnesses, and a lightweight sled designed for ice rescues. Each piece of equipment had been carefully chosen for moments like this, where every second mattered. Yet, despite their expertise, the scene before them presented a formidable challenge. The dog, barely visible on the distant ice floe, was clearly terrified and clinging to life. The icy wind howled relentlessly, cutting through even the thickest layers of clothing and sapping the strength of anyone exposed to it for too long. The lead rescuer, a man with years of experience in situations like this, crouched near the edge of the ice. His sharp eyes scanned the surface, noting every crack and weak point in the ice's fragile structure. He turned to his team, speaking quickly but calmly. "The ice is too thin in most places," he said, his voice low but firm. "We'll need to distribute our weight carefully. No sudden movements." Another rescuer, a woman with a steady demeanor, nodded and began assembling the rescue sled. "We'll need to tether ourselves securely," she added, glancing at the ropes. "If one of us goes through the ice, we can't afford to lose anyone." Her tone was matter-of-fact, but the gravity of her words settled heavily over the team. The wind picked up, biting at their exposed skin as they moved into position. The ice groaned ominously under the weight of their gear, a stark reminder of the danger they faced. The team worked quickly, securing the sled with ropes anchored to the shore and testing the strength of each connection. The crowd watched in tense silence, their breath visible in the frosty air as they clung to the hope that the professionals would succeed where they could not. The dog's faint bark broke through the wind, drawing everyone's attention back to the floe. The golden retriever's figure was barely visible now, its golden coat dusted with frost, blending into the frozen landscape. It shifted slightly, its paws slipping on the icy surface, and the floe wobbled precariously. The lead rescuer's jaw tightened. "We don't have much time," he muttered. With the sled ready, one of the rescuers lay flat on their stomach, securing themselves with a harness before inching forward onto the ice. The sled, designed to distribute weight evenly, glided smoothly across the surface, but every creak and groan of the ice sent ripples of tension through the crowd. The rescuer moved with painstaking care, stopping every few feet to test the ice and ensure the path was safe. The wind whipped around them, carrying snowflakes that stung like tiny needles against their faces. The water beneath the ice added another layer of menace, its dark, icy depths visible through the thinner patches of ice. Despite the conditions, the team pressed on, their focus unyielding. As the rescuer drew closer to the floe, the dog's movements became more frantic. The golden retriever barked again, a mix of fear and desperation, its eyes locked on the approaching figure. The rescuer paused, speaking softly to calm the dog from a distance. "Easy, buddy," they said, their voice steady despite the cold. "I'm here to help. Just stay still." The lead rescuer on the shore held his breath, his hands gripping the tether tightly. Every movement felt like a gamble, each second an eternity as the sled crept closer to the floe. The tension in the air was palpable, the crowd silent except for the occasional gasp as the ice groaned under the rescuer's weight. The dog's trembling figure seemed impossibly fragile, its golden fur a stark contrast to the cold, unyielding ice. The team knew the hardest part was yet to come. Reaching the dog was only the beginning. Bringing it back safely, with the ice deteriorating underfoot, would require precision, strength, and no small amount of luck. But they were determined. Failure was not an option, not when a life hung in the balance. The rescuer's sled glided slowly across the treacherous ice, its weight carefully distributed by the tether system anchored securely to the shore. Each creak and groan of the ice beneath them was a stark reminder of the precariousness of their mission. The lead rescuer, lying flat on the sled, advanced inch by inch, every movement calculated to minimize stress on the frozen surface. The crowd on the shore stood frozen themselves, their collective breath held as they watched the dangerous approach unfold. The ice floe where the golden retriever huddled seemed impossibly distant, a small island of fragility in a sea of uncertainty. The dog, sensing the movement, lifted its frost-dusted head and let out a faint bark. Its voice, weak but urgent, carried across the frozen lake, a haunting call that pushed the rescuers forward despite the ever-growing risks. The lead rescuer paused, raising a gloved hand to signal the team on the shore. The sled needed to stop for a moment. The ice had begun to crack audibly, the sound sharp and unnerving in the still air. Beneath them, the dark water of the lake seemed to beckon, its icy surface rippling faintly beneath the thinner patches of ice. The rescuer pressed a hand against the ice, listening, feeling, gauging whether it could hold a few more precious inches of progress. Behind them, the second rescuer adjusted the tension on the tether, ensuring it wouldn't snap under the strain. Their eyes darted between the lead rescuer and the dog, whose trembling form seemed even smaller against the vast expanse of the frozen lake. "Take it slow," the second rescuer muttered under their breath, though the words were meant more for themselves than anyone else. The golden retriever shifted nervously, its paws slipping slightly as the floe wobbled beneath it. The rescuer on the sled froze momentarily, their heart pounding as the dog's movement sent faint vibrations through the ice. They spoke softly, their voice calm and steady despite the tension. "It's okay, boy. Just stay still. I'm coming to get you." Each forward movement was an exercise in patience and precision. The rescuer used a long pole to distribute their weight further, pressing it gently against the ice to test for hidden weaknesses. The crackling sounds grew louder with each passing second, a chorus of danger that seemed to echo the crowd's rising anxiety. Onlookers covered their mouths, their eyes wide with fear as they watched the sled inch closer to the dog. The wind, relentless and bitter, whipped across the lake, scattering fine snow over the ice and reducing visibility. It stung at the rescuers' faces, biting through even their heavy winter gear. Despite the cold, sweat trickled down the lead rescuer's back, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on their shoulders. Every inch forward felt like a battle against both the elements and the ice itself. Finally, the sled was close enough for the rescuer to extend a hand toward the dog. The golden retriever flinched at first, its instincts torn between fear and hope. The rescuer stayed still, speaking gently, coaxing the dog to trust them. "I've got you," they said softly. "You're going to be okay." The dog, its dark eyes wide with a mix of fear and desperation, hesitated for a moment before creeping slightly closer to the rescuer's outstretched hand. The floe wobbled again, and the crowd on the shore collectively gasped, some averting their eyes, unable to watch the tension play out. The lead rescuer steadied the sled, extending their arm further until their gloved fingers brushed against the dog's frost-covered fur. "Good boy," the rescuer murmured, their voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through them. They slipped a looped rope gently over the dog's neck, securing it without startling the animal further. The dog let out a soft, trembling whimper but didn't resist, as if understanding that help had finally arrived. The return journey would be even more dangerous than the approach. With the dog now on the sled, the combined weight would test the limits of the ice like never before. But for the first time, hope began to edge out fear. The dog's presence on the sled was a small but powerful victory, a reminder of what was at stake and why the rescuers were willing to risk so much. The tension in the air remained thick, but the sight of the sled turning back toward the shore brought a flicker of relief to the onlookers. The dog, though still trembling, looked up at its rescuer, its eyes filled with something that resembled gratitude. The bond between them, human and animal, was unspoken but undeniable. Together, they faced the perilous path back to safety, one fragile step at a time. The sled reached the edge of the ice floe with a faint crunch, the sound eerily amplified in the stillness of the frozen lake. The rescuers held their breath, their movements deliberate and slow, knowing the slightest misstep could spell disaster. The golden retriever, huddled at the center of the floe, trembled violently, its frost-covered coat glinting in the weak winter light. Its dark eyes locked onto the rescuer nearest to it, a mix of fear and fragile hope flickering within them. The lead rescuer extended a hand cautiously, speaking in a low, calming voice meant to reassure the frightened dog. "Easy now," they murmured, their breath visible in the icy air. You're safe. I've got you. The dog flinched at first, its instincts screaming to pull away, but exhaustion won out. It stayed still, its body too weak to resist. The rescuer moved closer, their knees pressing into the thin ice that separated the Floe from the sled. Every movement was calculated, each second feeling like an eternity. When they finally reached the dog, the rescuer gently looped a harness around its chest. The dog let out a faint whimper, but didn't fight back. The frost on its fur melted slightly under the warmth of the rescuer's gloves. Another rescuer, tethered to the sled, passed a second rope forward to secure the dog fully. The team worked in perfect synchronization, their unspoken coordination born from countless hours of training. Yet, despite their experience, the tension was palpable. Every creak of the ice beneath them felt like a warning, a reminder that time was running out. Carefully, the lead rescuer lifted the retriever into their arms. The dog's body was alarmingly light, its ribs faintly visible beneath its matted fur. The rescuer felt its faint shivers against their chest, each tremor a testament to the animal's fight for survival. "We've got you," they whispered again, cradling the dog as though it were made of glass. The retriever's eyes closed briefly, its head resting against the rescuer's shoulder in a gesture that seemed to convey both relief and resignation. But the rescue was far from over. The journey back to the shore was fraught with danger, the added weight of the dog and the sled pressing the ice to its limits. The lead rescuer carefully placed the dog onto the sled, bundling it with a thermal blanket to shield it from the cutting wind. The sled creaked ominously as the team began their retreat, inching their way back across the treacherous ice. The crowd on the shore stood in silent anticipation, their breaths held as they watched the slow, painstaking progress. Each pull of the tether was met with a collective gasp, the tension between the rescuers and the ice visible even from a distance. The dog, now cocooned in warmth, barely moved. Its eyes flickered open occasionally, glancing toward the shore as though willing itself to reach safety. The ice groaned beneath them, cracks spidering out in all directions with each shift of weight. The rescuers communicated in short, urgent bursts, their voices carried away by the wind. "Keep it steady," one of them called, their grip on the tether tightening. "Don't stop now." The sled's progress was painfully slow, but it inched closer to the shore with each pull. Midway through their journey, the ice let out a deafening crack, the sound reverberating like a gunshot. The lead rescuer froze, their eyes darting to the network of fissures forming beneath them. The crowd gasped in unison, some covering their mouths in fear. For a moment, everything hung in the balance. One wrong move could send the sled, the dog, and the rescuers into the frigid depths below. But the team held their nerve. Adjusting their approach, they shifted their weight and redistributed the tension on the tether, stabilizing the sled. The seconds that followed felt like hours, but the ice held. Slowly, carefully, the rescuers resumed their retreat, every movement a calculated act of defiance against the lake's icy grip. Finally, the shore came within reach. The lead rescuer, now drenched in sweat despite the cold, pulled the sled onto solid ground with a final, determined heave. The crowd erupted into cheers and applause, their relief palpable as the golden retriever was carried to safety. The dog, though still shivering, lifted its head weakly, its dark eyes meeting those of the people who had come to witness its rescue. The rescuers collapsed briefly onto the snow, their breath coming in visible puffs as they exchanged weary smiles. They had done it. Against the odds, they had saved a life. The golden retriever, bundled in warmth and surrounded by its rescuers, seemed to understand. Its tail gave the faintest wag, a small but powerful signal of gratitude that touched everyone who saw it. The rescue of the golden retriever became more than just a moment of survival, it transformed into a powerful story that resonated far and wide, touching the hearts of everyone who heard it. What began as a dire situation on a frozen lake evolved into a testament to human courage, teamwork, and the unyielding bond between people and animals. The image of the trembling retriever, perched on its fragile ice floe, was etched into the memory of everyone who had stood on that icy shore. News of the rescue spread quickly. Local headlines celebrated the bravery of the rescue team, detailing every heart-pounding moment as they battled the elements to save the dog's life. Social media lit up with posts and pictures, the golden retriever wrapped in a thermal blanket becoming a symbol of hope and resilience. Comments poured in from people around the world, praising the selflessness of the rescuers and sharing their own stories of compassion. For those who had gathered at the lake that day, the experience left a lasting impact. Many spoke of how the sight of the dog, clinging to life against overwhelming odds, had reminded them of the fragility of existence. Others reflected on the extraordinary bravery of the rescue team, who had risked their own safety to save a life. The crowd that had once been a group of strangers now shared a bond, united by the emotions of that frigid afternoon. The golden retriever, named Lucky by the rescue team, became a local hero. It was later revealed that Lucky had wandered onto the lake while chasing a flock of geese, unaware of the danger that lay ahead. The dog's owner, an elderly man who had frantically searched for his beloved companion, was overjoyed to be reunited with him. Their tearful reunion, captured on camera, brought smiles and happy tears to all who witnessed it. But the story wasn't just about Lucky, it was a call to action for everyone. It reminded people that even in the coldest, most unforgiving moments, kindness and courage could prevail. The rescuers' determination showed that no life was too small or insignificant to fight for, and their actions inspired others to look at the world with a little more compassion. Schools used the story as an example in classrooms, teaching children about the importance of empathy and teamwork. Animal shelters reported an increase in adoptions, with families citing Lucky's story as a reminder of the joy and responsibility that comes with caring for a pet. Even those who had no direct connection to the event found themselves moved, their faith in humanity restored by the actions of the rescuers. Lucky's tale wasn't just about the dog, it was about the ripple effect of compassion. It showed how one act of bravery could inspire countless others, sparking a chain reaction of kindness that reached far beyond the frozen lake where it all began. If this story of courage and compassion touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments and let us know what it means to you. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories that remind us of the good in the world. Together, let's celebrate the power of kindness and the moments that bring us closer to one another.